Okay. What's the plan? Are you just... Where are we going? What? Is that... You speak a sign language? Are you kidding me? How are we supposed... Oh, chained to a deaf guy. Jesus. We need to cut this.
Give it up for Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Hey, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on this season of Fargo. Unbelievable, an incredible character that they're writing for you. I don't think we've ever seen you get to play a woman like this.
No, I mean, I don't often read roles like this in anything or see roles like this in anything, so it's been a real treat to get to play somebody so fun and complex and with so many layers to her, both kind of good and maybe a little bit nefarious, you know.
Well, her nefariousness is almost, as the season progresses, it feels like her nefariousness is almost something that she was born with, and she's looking for a way out. Her further trips into nefariousness, to overuse this word now, is almost like she's trying to get out, but digging herself further into the ditch.
Yeah, well, I think it's just what she knows. That's how she knows how to behave, is how to get what she wants through doing certain things. And but inside, she has this hope and this optimism and this real need for love and happiness and the perfect dream of a life. And I think that optimism is what kind of brings her inner light out and kind of makes you root for her, even though she does some bad things.
Let's talk about the show from the beginning. I mean, you were a fan of the first 2 seasons, right? And then how did this happen, getting involved in the 3rd season?
Well, I had been speaking with Noah, who's the showrunner of Fargo, since the 1st season. We first met about me possibly being in the 1st season, and at that time I had no idea what the show was, other than, you know, they're making a show about Fargo, which I thought sounded like kind of a crazy idea, because Fargo's my favorite movie.
It's the best. It is such an incredible. I mean, I love all Coen Brothers movies. There's a couple that aren't, you know,
right.
But they're mostly incredible. But anytime I go back and watch Fargo, it's everything about them just perfected.
It's
like,
perfect.
The gods aligned, and there's something about Fargo that is just beautiful and perfect.
It's one of the things that really made me want to act. As you know, I saw it really young, and it's one of those things. You know, I saw a lot of movies young that maybe I shouldn't have seen. You know, it's pretty violent and bloody and all of that. But that never. I always was just so drawn to Frances McDormand and the character she played, and that was sort of what I wanted to do as an actress, was just sort of that tone and that world and her strength and the way that she's strong, but she's funny and she's real. I loved it so much. So I was a little bit scared about the 1st season, and then I ended up not being available anyway, and it didn't really work out. And so, and then I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, like
Wish I had been available.
What a freaking missed opportunity this was, because it's so, I was blown away. It defied all the odds of what you would think a show based on a movie in general would be like. And so I loved the 1st season. 2nd season came out, and I was like, oh my God, it's just like he's done it again. I don't know how he did it. And the 2nd season was the same. He had tried to get me into a cameo in that, and I wasn't available.
Wow. So Noah's a big fan.
Noah's a fan. It's not. We're mutual fans of each other. So by the time the 3rd season came around, he called and he was like, "Are you busy?" And I was like, "No."
Did he have the character in mind already when he called, or was he just like, "I want you in the show. I'm going to write something for you"?
It was already written. I didn't know what the character was, and I said yes without knowing. I didn't ask any questions. I just said, "I'm in. You don't have to tell me anything. I'm in." And so I was totally on board before I even got the 1st episode. And he didn't really tell me anything about the character. He just sent the 1st script and just said, "You'll be playing Nikki." And I was like, whoa, this is totally out of left field. I thought I was going to be playing some nice, young, you know, fresh-faced cop, Minnesota nice, you know, something like that. So I had no idea. I just didn't expect this character to even live in the Fargo universe, let alone be playing her. And once I stepped into it and started doing it, it was like, oh, this is actually really perfect for me and really perfect for Fargo. It took me a second to kind of realize it.
What about it made it feel perfect for you?
Well, I think when I first read it, I wasn't sure how much of a femme fatale she was supposed to be or how much of a hardened criminal she was supposed to be. And that sort of worried me because I was like, I'm not very hard-edged. I don't really know. I'm not like, I don't play just sort of like sexy cool very well, or it's not something I'm particularly comfortable in. And so.
But you play it in the first couple episodes, I feel like. What we see that sort of transcend itself in terms of a caricature, but
Right.
initially at the top she is viewed that way, and you are kind of playing that a little bit, especially in that like that slow motion walk into the sort of dirty casino that the two of you do in the first episode.
It was really fun. I mean, what allowed me to like go for it was when Noah told me that her relationship with Ray is real. Because I just didn't want to be playing, I don't know, I didn't know how to play somebody who didn't have some inner light or love or truth, to hang on to. And then once I knew that was there, I knew I could bring that to her, and then I could just have fun all around that, as long as there was something there to kind of ground me in her that I could hold on to.
How did you discover your Minnesota accent?
I actually, right before we started shooting, Noah emailed me and was like, I think Nikki should be from Chicago. Which at first I was kind of disappointed because I was like, I'm going to be on Fargo. I want to do the Fargo thing. And then once I started doing the scenes with the Chicago accent, it made so much more sense for her because it was kind of not fully clicking for me with the Minnesota accent just because she's so not polite. That accent really just feels like you're being nice even if you don't feel that way. You're sort of covering it with niceties and politeness, and Nikki's so not that person. So Chicago ended up being perfect because it sounds really similar, but it's just much more direct and bold and, sort of brash sounding than the Minnesota accent. So I loved it. It was really fun to get into that accent.
One thing that I really love about this season of the show is that I think on paper or on the surface when they started showing the previews for the show, it seems like it's about Ewan McGregor and it's about, this big male star. But as the show progresses, it's really about these strong female characters that are being held under their thumb or surrounded by weak-willed, naive, or just straight-up evil men like David Thewlis. But as you get into like 5, 6, 7, I mean, Carrie Coon right off the top starts as someone who's trying to break out from underneath that. But your character we see in this, especially in this past episode, where you're breaking out from under that as well. Were you surprised by that?
A little bit, although in retrospect it makes so much sense. I mean, you can't really have Fargo without the center of it being some sort of strong female force, because the movie is centered around that. And I think that's a really important part of the Fargo universe, and I think that Noah finds that to be a really important theme that should be continued, throughout the seasons. And so,
and Kirsten Dunst was kind of that in the second season.
Dunst, yeah, there's always a female sort of center in some ways, and I think what's great about this season is it's as the season has progressed, it's sort of become these two parallel female centers, that have started to build as the episodes have gone on, and Gloria and Nikki have these kind of parallel paths that they're on that are very different from one another, but they're sort of connected in a lot of ways in terms of what they're going through. They're up against they're so underestimated by everyone around them all the time, and they're just trying to kind of get what they want and what they need up against a lot of odds.
And you can kind of see that their sympathies at the very least are going to start to align at some point with the death of Ray and the death of Gloria's, is it her father or her father-in-law?
It's her stepdad.
Her stepdad, excuse me. Because as she's walking out of the jail cell where Nikki's sitting, she says, what's your favorite kind of pie? I'm going to bring you a pie. So that's kind of nice that we're starting to see these two stories kind of come together, and that hopefully they're both, can stand on top of the mountain together, holding each other's hands.
Yeah, no, I think it's really lovely. They're on two different sides of the law, and you're used to seeing the kind of the sort of cop character just trying to go after the criminal in whatever way they can. But I think Gloria has this understanding that they share something in terms of what it is they're both going through, and it's kind of a nice unspoken thing.
One of the things that I love about Fargo that I think was a surprise to Coen Brothers fans is that the show isn't just an homage to Fargo. It is also really an homage to a lot of Coen Brothers movies. That everything kind of gets a little tip of the hat to it. And last night we saw a tip of the hat to The Big Lebowski, which was so much fun to get a tip of the hat to The Big Lebowski with Ray Wise from Twin Peaks, which was, as a nerd, I was just sort of like, yo, this is so cool. What was it like doing that scene with Ray Wise?
That was so cool. I was so excited when I first read that scene. I just thought this is going to be the best, just to get to sit there and be in this surreal moment with this totally mesmerizing person.
Did you get the scene when you first read it? Like when you first read it, were you like, I get this 100%?
No, which tends to happen on the first read of all the Fargo episodes. I always love them, but it takes me a couple reads to really understand everything that is being said, on all the different levels, because it's so much more than just this happens and then this happens. It's like this happens and that represents so many things, and there's so many themes being played with, and that it took me a while to realize. I mean, especially with what happens with Goran's character, and right after it, there's a lot of strange things, surreal things happening. And so sort of talking about it with everybody afterwards was great, and hearing everybody's interpretation of, is this purgatory? Is this, limbo? Is this where people go, to be judged? And, everybody sort of had their little interpretations of exactly what it was meant to be.
And the character that I believe Sam Elliott plays in The Big Lebowski, when he appears at the bar to talk to the dude, the dude, while not maimed and suffering from open wounds, is in the midst of a kind of downer moment and is getting a sort of refresher from that character. Mm-hmm. What do you think led them to cast Ray Wise as, because it's not a cowboy, but it is an iconic face?
Well, I think, especially this season and last season, Noah's really played with these existential ideas, that come into play, and things get a little bit outside of reality and a little bit surreal. Last season, I'm sorry if anybody didn't see it, but there's UFOs, So, and I think, episode 3 is when we first see Ray Wise's character, and he has a similar moment with Gloria on a plane where he sort of, I don't know.
Well, I was just thinking, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but you say the UFO, and we're talking about Coen Brothers homages, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I wonder if that was a subtle homage to The Man Who Wasn't There with Billy Bob Thornton, which has this sort of wild and out of nowhere ending where a UFO shows up. Spoiler alert, but come on, it's 12 years old. But, right? I mean, he's a barber or something like that, and then all of a sudden, randomly, a UFO shows up, and that's just how
I know that one, but
it ends. Well, I just ruined it for you.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Thank you. Great. I was going to watch that tomorrow.
It's wonderful. It's shot in black and white. It's a really beautiful Coen Brothers movie.
I mean, I think there's so many homages all over the place, and that's, one of the great things. And he plays with so many different elements and themes. Sorry, I'm losing my earring. And I think that's, it was a way to kind of to bring something sort of more surreal and bigger than our kind of world, and let these characters sort of have these moments of growth through these existential crisis, moments where they're trying to figure out what life means, And I think Ray Wise is the perfect person to help you through an existential crisis.
Talk about doing some of these scenes that Noah writes. Noah, I think there's only a few other television writers who write like Noah Hawley, or not even television writers, but writers. And I would say Vince Gilligan a little bit on Breaking Bad, and even Tarantino a little bit, who you worked with on Death Proof. Tarantino much more, I think, embedded with pop culture phrases within the dialogue. But this idea of there's a dramatic thing that's going to happen, and the audience knows that it's going to happen. So let's dance around that as long as we can until we finally land on it, which I think Noah does beautifully in a lot of scenes. Can you talk about performing that?
I mean, he just has so much sort of confidence, which I think the scripts always read that way, where it's like, this episode might be dark and sad and bleak, and the audience might be left just feeling like drained afterwards, like, what did I just experience? But it's so worth it, because the next episode something's going to pick up, and it's going to be like, it's like he has so much confidence in the audience and their trust in the material and in the characters, and I feel that trust as an actor too, of just being able to kind of go wherever he's going to lead it. And this season definitely got, I think, a lot darker than any of us were expecting, and even than he was expecting. There was kind of a point halfway through the season where he was like, okay, we all have to sort of regroup, because this is getting really sad.
He's like, I've gone down a rabbit hole, someone pull me out.
Yeah, he was getting all the dailies back, and it was like really, there was just a lot more depth of feeling than I think any of us were even really expecting, with sort of what happens with the Ray character and the ramifications of that afterwards.
I guess it's aired, so we can talk about what happens, right?
Yeah.
His death is really bleak. It was maybe my my favorite part of the season so far, because I think the way Ewan McGregor played the other brother, I forget names.
Emmett.
Emmett. Smart enough to know not to touch the body, which was sort of limiting his ability to be emotional about the moment, was just beautifully handled performance-wise.
And it's so, I mean, that is so in keeping with Fargo, because it's like a person who is just so torn. Like inside, you can see there's something in him. It's like, I should be doing something, I should be helping, but then the instinct is just to self-preserve, you know, and it's not, and I'm not actively trying to kill this person, but I have to protect myself and my livelihood, so I'm gonna allow this horrible thing to happen in front of me. And that's so many of the characters in Fargo, when they get into trouble, it's because they're so scared, you know, of what's gonna happen to themselves, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse from there. So I love that. It was such a beautiful scene, and so sad, and then everything just kind of kept being so sad after that for everybody. It was like, Ray's gone. You know, it was such a light of the first half of the season, was the Ray and Nikki relationship, and how much fun they had together.
And Nikki's beating was pretty brutal as well. You know, I watched it last night. I marathoned like the last 6 episodes last night, and her beating, I was watching it with my girlfriend, and it starts, and you hear the sounds, and we push in on Michael Stuhlbarg's face, who's the best. And she goes, God, this is so, my girlfriend was like, God, this is so gruesome. And I was like, it's actually not.
Not showing anything.
Not showing anything. But there was something about his performance and the sounds that made it feel, I think, far more gratuitous and graphic than if we were to actually see the beating.
Just seeing his reaction. And again, it's that same sort of Fargo-y thing of somebody just being paralyzed with fear to the point where they're not doing anything about what's happening. And then,
how much,
you know.
I was curious when I was watching this, how much of the direction, when you get the scripts, how much of the direction is written into the scripts? Because there are some shots in that show that most television shows would just not have the time to plan out. And it's not even about planning it out in terms of coming up with the idea on set. Sometimes it's about, there was a shot of Thewlis in one moment that started on his teeth, pulled out to his face, moved into a wide of people walking in, and then slowly pushed in. I mean, just the mathematics of being able to do that with a camera, most TV shows would not take the time to do that. Is that stuff mapped out at all in the scripts when you get them?
Some of it is, and then some of it is dependent on the director, you know, that we have for change directors every 2 episodes. And some directors were much more interested in those kind of shots, and some were more interested in keeping it simple. So that's another thing that was really amazing, was to see these different directors coming in with different styles, but somehow it all feels like one piece. And that's a pretty incredible thing, the way that happens. But there was there's something about the scripts that feel very clear, and I think I heard that from a lot of the directors who came in, that they were just sort of like, it just sort of speaks to you, like you know how you're supposed to shoot this. And also having seen the last 2 seasons and knowing the Coen Brothers universe, there's a lot of hints, you know, there.
We lost it.
We lost it. Let's just do this for now. In terms of the way that it should feel or the way that it should be shot. But there, you know, so it's a bit of a mix. There's definitely moments in the scripts where it goes, we pan over to this, and then the camera pulls back to this. So occasionally, you know, Noah sort of throws in like little hints as to what he thinks it should be. But then also, the thing about TV is you have to be able to delegate to the director that's coming in and let them have their ideas. And so it was really interesting to see that kind of dance happen.
You also have to move quickly. How do you find, I mean, you just came off of some television shows in the past few years. How do you find Fargo moves in terms of getting this style that they get, which takes a lot of technical work, versus how fast you have to move?
Long hours, incredibly long hours. It definitely felt more like a movie a lot of times than TV. And my experience in the past couple of years of doing a lot of TV is that I never sat down. I mean, always going. When they say, oh, we're setting up a shot, it takes 2 seconds and then we're going. And this was definitely a lot more like a film, in that sometimes you'd be waiting a couple hours for them to get the crane shot set up and the sweeping big moment. And, you know, there's a lot more, I guess, specific camera work that was very cinematic, and so took a bit more setup time, which I often wondered, how are we doing this on a TV schedule? And I never quite figured it out. It's some sort of magic that happens on this show, that they're able to take the time to get those shots. But a lot of times it is like doing almost like an indie film, like a really artful indie film, where you're gonna go, okay, we're gonna do this really complicated camera shot, but the whole scene's going to be a oneer.
Most indie films wouldn't do that, though.
Well, most wouldn't. Yeah. The cool ones, you know.
The cool ones do, but you talk to those directors and they're like, I don't know how we did that. That was unbelievable, you know.
Yeah, but that's what I love. I love coming in and being like, it's gonna be crazy. You're gonna do the scene from top to bottom. You're gonna jump out a window. You're gonna run around the back. You're gonna come. We did a shot like that where it was me escaping through the window, and I had to be, in the room looking out the window at the door to see somebody was coming in. I had to run into the bathroom, start getting out the window by the time the sort of cop character comes in, kicks open the door to find me. So I had to go under the camera, because the camera's moving around the room, and get into the bathroom, get in position. I had to, everything had to be timed out perfectly so that the camera could pan to me getting out the window, pan back to these people that are just coming into the room. So
how long did you rehearse that? How many times did you have to end up shooting it?
I think we got like 7 takes of it, and it was just so fun.
What most people don't realize, if you've never been on a film set before, it's not just the actor and the camera person, the one person moving the camera, who have to be matching each other and moving at the same. You have focus pullers, you have lighting in different areas, you have so many different things that need. So when you watch a shot that's longer than a minute, that's people moving around, there's a good maybe 15 people who all have a specific thing to do to make that thing work.
It was great. It was so much fun because there was this girl named Amanda Zotek who was a PA or an AD on the show, and she would have to crouch down in the room with me to tell me when to run to the bathroom, because it all had to be timed out so carefully. And I would crouch down with her and get in position like a runner's lunge. And then when the time was right, she would just go, 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 go. And then I would just run to the bathroom. It was so exciting. It's the best. I love those kind of shots.
Yeah, that's so much more fun than a reverse shot, right?
Yeah, no, it keeps it so much more interesting.
Do you get, I don't remember if you've gotten any scenes with him yet, but David Thewlis is unbelievable in this season. I've always Naked is one of my favorite movies, the Mike Leigh film, and Thewlis has always been just one of the best. But in this season, they wrote something unbelievable for him. Have you gotten a scene with him? Are you going to get a scene with him?
It's a little spoilery, but we do cross paths eventually. I was so excited to get to work with him. He is so brilliant. And it's effortless just to get to act with him, because I don't have to do anything but just respond to what he's giving you. Because
those teeth.
So much, I know. And
I'm sure, as an actor, as soon as you see the teeth and the look, you're like, I'm good. I can do the scene.
Exactly.
I got it.
I got a lot to work with here. This is great. And he's also the sweetest. I mean, everybody on the show was just the absolute sweetest, loveliest. So it was a really amazing experience.
Now, so he was playing 2 parts for most of the show up until about an episode ago, right? How was that on him while you were working with him? I mean, is he jumping into a fat suit and going over into another scene and then coming back and doing Emmett on a daily basis, or would they break it up in a different way for him?
I think they tried, it was fairly compartmentalized into usually when he was Ray, he'd be Ray the whole day. But there were a lot of days where he'd be Ray first half of the day, Emmett second half, and it would take 2 hours to change him over from one to the other. So that was really exhausting for him. And I mean, we were all shooting long hours, but on those days for him, it would be we'd be like, can people do this? Can you work that long and do all those things? And he never complained, or he was just so happy to be playing those roles because it's such a fun opportunity. But yeah, that was definitely a challenge. And for me, for the most part, I just saw him as Ray. So people keep asking me, what was it like to work with him playing 2 characters? And I only really ever saw him as Ray. And occasionally I'd bump into him when he was Emmett, and I'd be like, oh, hello, nice to see you, sir. I don't know who you are anymore, because it was a totally different person.
Now, before I get to questions, in last night's episode, things got fairly violent. And we saw, it aired last night, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, God. If it was going to be tonight, I felt so bad.
No, it was last night.
So last night's episode, we see you with Mr. Wrench, and we see things get violent. You guys inadvertently sort of cut a head off, which you cut DJ Qualls' head off, which was my favorite thing. And the fact that DJ Qualls showed up for an episode and a half was so much fun.
No.
What was it like cutting DJ Qualls' head off?
It was a lot of fun. I love DJ Qualls. He was another lovely, sweet addition to the cast when he came on board. But we did have a moment. It was crazy. I mean, at that point, that was such an intense, crazy sequence to shoot for TV. Because they did spend extra time on things, but there's only so much time you can spend when you're shooting an entire episode of something in 8 days or however long, we get to shoot something. So that sequence was like, we kept calling it was the Revenant on Fargo, basically. So trying to shoot the Revenant in 8 days was really intense. So it did get a little scary sometimes, trying to like do all these stunts and learn everything so quickly and then shoot it. And so we had one take where we were sort of pulling him by a chain, by his neck, basically, up against a tree stump, and then we pull on it and yank it until his head comes off. There was one, DJ Qualls, and there was one, he was always keeping his hands like this to protect his neck and sort of like struggling with it, and it was wet, and we were rolling in the snow, and it's freezing and wet, and there was one take where his hands slipped, and he just like starts, he just freaked out because he like, yeah, of course, just like full on panic attack, and just got up and was like, stop, and we were felt so bad, it was such a scary moment. He was fine. It was really just more of a scare.
And then you went to do it again.
And then we just were like, well, can we?
That's one of those.
Can we try another?
The poor director and AD have to be like, DJ, you okay? Everything good? Okay, sit back down. We're gonna wrap the chain around your neck again.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So there were a lot of moments like that where it was like, ooh, okay, we gotta breathe and not go so fast and take our time through all of this. But it's hard when it's so moving so fast and everything is so hectic sometimes.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a right there? You're holding a microphone.
Yep. Hi. So I was just wondering, considering you've been in a number of like horror, action, drama films, how much of those films in the past that you like channel from those characters that you've played to now play in another, obviously like drama, action kind of show like this?
It's funny how things sort of build on top of themselves in a way that always ends up helping you with the next one, and it's never really intentional for me. I don't go, oh, I'm going to do this job because I just did this one, and this one that will help me do this. I don't think of it that way, but it always ends up inadvertently happening. Like when I got into these last episodes of Fargo, it started to feel like 10 Cloverfield Lane. I started to feel like I was in survival mode, action, woman, sort of just scraping her way out of the situation that she's in, and using whatever tools are at her disposal to do that. And so all of a sudden I was like, oh, I've done this before. This is really familiar. But I didn't
doing that for a while. I mean, we joked about Final Destination in the green room. I mean, you were the lead in a horror movie like that, which is like what the female lead in a Final Destination movie generally does.
Yes, yeah.
Got some fans.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I sort of, even when I had no idea Nikki was that was gonna happen for Nikki when I signed on to the show, but somehow I keep falling into these kinds of roles, even when I don't know it, that require a certain resiliency or a certain kind of, thing, a strength. And so it's really nice that I've been able to kind of build on those roles to the point where it's becoming kind of innate now to do those things. And it's, I get to take it on a little bit of myself and feel a little bit like, oh yeah, I'm a little resilient too. It's cool.
Do you think that writers and directors sort of writing those sort of aspects of a character for you comes from seeing you a certain way or seeing the way you come across on camera a certain way?
God, I have no idea.
Like, do you feel like a person who's particularly resilient and strong, and so when people write that, you're like, hell yeah, that's me? Or are you like, oh, I don't know?
I really don't. I really don't know. I like to think that I am. I think that I am, but I don't know what it is about me that people see that makes them feel that I can, portray those roles. I think something about me, I guess, gives that off on screen, and I'm really happy about that. But I certainly don't pick anyone's brain about it. I don't really want. I'm like, just tell me why.
You are not resilient at all. You are
Right.
deeply insecure.
Yeah. So I don't ask any questions, but I like it very much, and it makes me happy.
It's one of those strange things, I think, for people who are on camera, be it acting or anything else, is that no matter what your personality is, and no matter how much you are yourself on screen, like, the camera does kind of change you in some way and change your personality, and people start perceiving you in a different way.
Definitely, and I know that there are things to just the way your face is structured that can make people think certain things about you as an actor. So I don't necessarily always take it so personally if people think I'm this way or that way, because I've got friends who are the loveliest people in the world who only ever play awful people because they're like, I just have this face that it's like sharp-edged or something, and people don't want to see me as a nice person, and they are nice people. So sometimes things don't really translate. So who knows? Maybe I am just like a weak little flower, and somehow I just look strong on camera.
Let's get another question.
Hi. So since you are a Coen Brothers fan and you really love the work and you're in the show, if they would ever come to your house and knock on your door saying that they have a spot for you in their next film, would you take it?
Yeah. Without hesitation, absolutely. I mean, they're really have always been. I auditioned for them once, and even that was like, I was like, okay, I'm good now, thank you.
What movie was it for?
It was for Inside Llewyn Davis, the Carey Mulligan part, and I had to sing and everything, and got to sit with them and talk, and they were so cool. And at the time, I had just come out with this movie called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And they were so nice about it. They were like, that sounds so cool. And they wanted to hear all about it. And I was like, the Coen Brothers want to hear about my weird vampire movie. That's so awesome.
Next question.
Hi. So in recent years with your work, you've worked with some theater vets, like John Gallagher and Aaron Tveit, just to name drop. Would you ever consider working in theater, doing the stage at any point?
I would love to. A couple of times I've come close to doing it, where I've talked to somebody about being in a play, and then we've gotten to the point of scheduling, and then things have fallen apart. But I would love to. I'd be really scared to, because I've never really done it, and it seems really daunting to do the same thing every night and know something from top to bottom and not be able to get another take and sort of be projecting out to the back of the audience and all those things that I've never really had to think about, because I'm so used to the camera and how that works, and that's so natural for me. But I think it would be a really kind of important thing for me to do at some point, to know what it's like and to be able to kind of stretch that part of myself. So I definitely hope to do that in the future.
So there's 1 or 2 episodes left of the season?
Yeah, after last night, it's just 2, which is
2
so
episodes.
weird. Yeah.
And it's Wednesday nights at 10 on FX. It's really, maybe the best show on television right now. One of the most fun actresses to watch in movies and television. Ray Elizabeth Winstead, everybody. Thank you so much.
So much.